Chamber will recognize Representative Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good to see you.
Good to see you, ma'am.
Mr. Speaker, I move for acceptance of the Joint Committee's favorable report and concurrence with the Senate and passage of the bill.
Question before the Chamber is passage of the bill. Will remark further, Representative.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. The clerk has in his possession LCO 10080. I ask that he be requested to call it and that I be allowed to summarize.
Thank you. Will the clerk please call LCO number 10080, which will be designated Senate Amendment Schedule A.
LCO number 10080, designated Senate Amendment Schedule A, and offered by Senators Winfield, Ostin, and Formica.
The representative seeks leave of the chamber to summarize the amendment. Is there objection to summarization? Is there objection to summarization? Hearing none, Representative Reed, you may proceed with your summarization.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a Millstone bill, no surprise, but it has changed and evolved considerably since we were first introduced to it a couple of sessions ago, actually. And it's done so to alleviate many of the concerns that legislators have expressed about potentially not having a role in what is determined as this process goes forward. This amendment would require DEEP and PURA to conduct an appraisal of Millstone that is then brought to the legislature, and it's due to the legislature to be, their findings need to be brought to the legislature by next February, February 1st, 2018. Then the legislature can either approve those findings or deny those findings. And if they are approved, there's a process that will allow DEEP to really study and do the analytics on what is going on with our energy supply, our global warming goals, and the viability of Millstone. I move adoption.
Thank you, ma'am. The question for the chamber is adoption of Senate Amendment Schedule A. Will you remark on the amendment? Will you remark on the amendment? Representative Hody? Of the 120th, ma'am, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, a few questions to the good chairwoman of the Energy Committee, through you.
Representative Reed, please prepare yourself. Representative Hody, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, there's a lot of debate and dialogue and difference of opinions going on about this bill, as it has been for the last several years. So I just want to ask a couple clarifying questions to Representative Reed from Brantford. Does this bill provide any subsidy to Millstone? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Reed.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, no, it does not.
Representative Hody.
Thank you for that answer. And does this bill complement the governor's executive order? I think the number was 59. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Reed.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, yes, it does.
Representative Hody.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks to the good chairwoman. Does this bill raise electricity rates in Connecticut? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Reed.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, no, it does not.
Representative Hody.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the good chairwoman, who or what agencies will take part in this entire process? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Reed.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, DEEP, the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, and PURA, the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority. And all of these processes obviously are going to involve public hearings and the ability of legislators and various stakeholders to participate as well. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Hody.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as this process moves forward after the March 1st deadline that I believe the Committee of Cognizance is updated on the status of DEEP's findings of this appraisal, are there any other agencies like the Attorney General or the Office of Consumer Counsel, the procurement manager? Is there anybody else included input included in the outcome of this process. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Reed.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, yes, indeed. The Office of Attorney General, the Office of Consumer Counsel, who's been very involved in the whole process of developing this legislation, and the procurement manager that we have within DEEP.
Representative Hoyt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And through you, just so the folks in the chamber understand, what is the role of the Office of Consumer Counsel? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Reed.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, the Office of Consumer Counsel is to protect the consumer. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Hoyt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So to that point, we have many sets of eyes looking at this and a lot of balance of this process of this appraisal or study. Would that be correct in stating that? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Reed.
Through you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, indeed.
Representative Hoyt.
Thank you. And as we get through past March 1st, and if this process moves forward, in the evaluation, is there any opportunity for DEEP and Pura or the other agencies that we have mentioned to weigh in on what resources we have in Connecticut for generating electricity, what the balance is, how much they produce, what the cost is to ratepayers? It's similar to the, is it the IRP, the Integrated Resource Plan? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Reed.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, yes. And as those of us who spend a good time in dealing with these kinds of issues, it's the kind of thing where we realize that there's essentially a battle on for the control of the next generation of energy. We're in a transitional period. It's really important to know that we are ready to go when we do lose our nuclear, and we are losing our nuclear all over the country because of the change in the economics of it all. And so it's incredibly important that we finally get to a place where we understand what is going to happen after Millstone and begin planning to make that happen. And to do that, that just can't happen in a knee-jerk way. That has to have analytics, that has to have study, and so this is going to be a process, if implemented, if we approve to go ahead with this, that will do all that due diligence that we really have not done in the past, and it needs to happen. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Hoyt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and my thanks to the good gentlewoman from Branford. This process and this education that we've been going through for the last 2 years or so seems to be ongoing. Yet, at this point in time, through you, Mr. Speaker, do you think we are at the position where we can store electricity on a grid scale size in order to really promote our renewables, our renewable power, so we can harness it and maintain it and save it for another day, or is that a few years in the future? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Reed.
Through you, Mr. Speaker. Not only do we not have the storage available yet to really make renewables ready for prime time on a major grid scale, we also have in this region, in the New England region, siting issues. The reality is we are a much more densely populated area, and we have a very, very savvy environmental class of people who are really, really involved in trying to protect the environment, and that makes siting anything extremely difficult. So what we've been discovering, and as we may remember, we passed a bill last session that is essentially putting a moratorium on developing grid-scale renewables, solar, wind, on farm fields and forests. We're discovering that when people intellectually love this stuff, but the minute it begins to come to a neighborhood near them, they suddenly are terrified by it. Wait a minute, it's too big, it's going to take up too much acreage. These siting issues are really going to be something we have to surmount, and it's going to take a lot of time. So in the interim, we cannot lose 2,100 megawatts, 50% of our power. We have to have a game plan. We have to come up with something that gets us from here to there and in a rational way. And so No storage yet. Siting is going to be a real challenge, and that's one of the reasons that this bill is really important. It's really going to take a look at where we are and how we can get to where we need to go. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Hoyt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the good representative for that very thorough answer and explanation. I understand that we have other kinds of generation, solar, wind, some anaerobic digestion, but through you, Mr. Speaker, what is the major source of electricity generation for Connecticut and New England? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Reed.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, it is nuclear, and that is a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week base load generation. 50%, sometimes more than 50% of our electricity, the largest generator in all of New England. It's an incredible, valuable resource. And one of the things we also talk about is, given some of the economic challenges we're facing now, to send a message that as we grow Sikorsky and as we grow Electric Boat and as we try to develop more manufacturing, because that's who we are, you know, we're a state that has always excelled in those areas. We can't be losing our base load until we are ready to replace it. And those replacements have to be in place. You know, one of the other issues is when Millstone shuts down to refuel, the prices of electricity spike because you suddenly realize that we're turning on a lot of gas plants. We're turning on a lot of plants that they're called peakers. They only operate when you need them in peak demand, and those prices skyrocket. So it's a little bit of a bellwether of understanding how we have to get a handle on this. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Hoyt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So through you, what would be the second most prevalent generation of electricity other than nuclear in the New England states?
Representative Reed.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, natural gas.
Representative Hoyt.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, excuse me, just a second. I just want to make a comment first
Sure.
before I ask the question.
Sure.
So there are several of us in the chamber who are fighting the pipeline expansion that would be based on the ratepayers paying for it rather than the utility companies. And I can understand that argument. I guess we'll do that for another day, maybe next session. But currently, through you, Mr. Speaker, are we constricted at any time with our natural gas pipeline? And when would those constrictions happen most normally? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Reed.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, not only are we constricted, it's getting worse. And it happens frequently in the winter months. And I think most of us will remember just a couple of years ago when those constrictions really impacted our generation, because we generate with the natural gas throughout New England. We switched our generators over from coal to natural gas. When there was not enough fuel available, the prices skyrocketed. It's a problem. And there's even concern. I know the Consumer Council has really been concerned that there might be blackouts and brownouts. So this is something that ISO New England, our federal oversight entity, has been looking at and is worried about. And so, you know, making sure that we have the resources available to keep the lights on and the houses warm is really key. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Hoyt.
Thank you very much. So in my summary, initially anyway, on this, to retire 2,100 megawatts or to lose that generating capacity would put Connecticut at a disadvantage for several reasons. One, it's zero carbon. Two, we don't have the natural gas generation that we would need to supplant all of the nuclear energy that we are currently producing. Three, we don't have storage that would support a true renewable product that would be efficient for Connecticut. And four, I guess the last part about this is an appraisal. This is a look, this is a study, this complements the governor's executive order number 59. This is part of the process. We just went through a process, a collaborative, consensus-building process with a budget. I align this, even though not everybody was happy because the results weren't exactly perfect for everyone, but this is a process to understand what we do when we retire nuclear, or what we stand to lose or gain if we keep it and we work together and we have a blend of different kinds of generation. So, Mr. Speaker, I am in support of this bill again. I think I voted for it several times and several reiterations. I will continue to listen to the debate, but I would encourage my colleagues to support it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Representative McCarty of the 38th on Senate Amendment A.
Good afternoon. I rise in very strong support of the bipartisan legislation in front of the chamber today for so many reasons that are vital to the economic well-being of the state of Connecticut. I would also like to take this opportunity, if I may, to thank and commend the leadership on both sides of the aisle for keeping the discussion on nuclear going forward, and to our House Speaker, Joe Ersimowitz, for allowing the bill to be called today. As we know, this debate has been going on for the past 24 months, and I would like to today try to point out and enumerate the reasons for which I am so supportive of this legislation, and then also to try to dispel some of the very spurious arguments and false characterizations that have been levied at the legislation and at the nuclear power plant. So to begin with, I'd like...
Representative McCarty,
Yes.
we are on Senate Amendment Schedule A. You have comments on the bill. Maybe they would be appropriate when we pass the amendment and then have the bill.
Excuse me, Mr. Speaker, you're correct. I've already moved over to the actual legislation, so I apologize, and I'll stand again. I am actually in very strong support of the amendment by Senate A as well. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Steinberg of the 136th on Senate Amendment Schedule A.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will reserve my comments for the underlying bill.
Thank you. We remark further on Senate Amendment A. Remark further on Senate Amendment A. If not, I will try your minds. All those in favor of Senate Amendment A signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment passes. We remark further on the bill as amended by Senate Amendment A. We remark further on the bill as amended by Senate A. Representative Steinberg of the 136th, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to think of myself as a good environmentalist. I've tried to always be on the right side of the key environmental issues in the state. I'd also like to think of myself as an avid proponent of new energy, by which I mean renewable energy and energy efficiency projects. So you would think that when it comes to this proposal on behalf of Millstone, I would be lining up with the environmental community, ARP, and the like, but you would be wrong. I support this study because it is necessary for us to confront, as Representative Reed pointed out, the strategy for the future for this state. This legislation opens the door for us to have the conversation we need to have. In fact, I would say we need an even broader conversation about our energy portfolio. I think we should, now that we've cut the regional greenhouse gas initiative funds, we should be talking about a carbon charge for the region and talk about ways in which we can appropriately assess the value of carbon fuels, of carbon-free fuels in our entire portfolio. My fear is if we do not take this path, we are consigning ourselves to some very bad choices, not merely for ourselves, but for the entire region. I do take Dominion at their word that they could, in a period of years, not immediately, but 5, 7, 10 years, shut down this plant, leaving us with a serious capacity issue in New England. I, for one, would not like to be more reliant on natural gas as we go forward. That's a huge infrastructure build that is better invested in new technologies for really green energy alternatives, such as storage, such as solar, such as wind. That's where our investment really ought to be. We should build out only as much natural gas as we need as a bridge fuel until we can get to a truly renewable economy, which is inevitable for us. For right now, and for right now I mean a period that might last as long as 5 to 10 years, Millstone is part of that equation. And it is in our interests as a state and as a region to keep Millstone in the mix and not to risk them following through on what they have done in other states. What we're talking about here, if the study confirms some of the things we've talked about, is no more than a 5-year contract, which I view as an eye blink in the context of the energy landscape, which is constantly shifting. I believe that if we go down this path, we will have more bites of the apple, more opportunities to talk to PURA, to OCC and others, to make sure this is in ratepayer interests. And I believe that this is a strategic choice for Connecticut that suits our long-term interests. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative McCarty, on the bill as amended, ma'am. You have the floor.
Whoops. My micro, no, there it goes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for the second time to express that I am in very strong support of the legislation as amended that is before us today for many reasons, but primarily because it is in the best interest of our state of Connecticut for both economic and environmental reasons. And if I may again, I would just like to commend the leadership on both sides of the aisle for keeping the discussion going, and also to House Speaker Joe Simowitz for allowing the bill to be called today. As we said, this debate has been going on for 24 months, and it's really vital that we take action today. I would like to try to dispel some of the false arguments that have been promulgated over the last 24 months and try to explain that the bill in front of us, the legislation in front of us today, what it is and what it is not. First, I'd like to begin by saying that this legislation is not a subsidy. I'll repeat it. It is not a subsidy. What it does actually is it allows nuclear power to be allowed to make a bid into the state procurement process if it's deemed necessary. There's tremendous oversight that is attached to the legislation by both PURA and DEEP, so there is really, truly no risk here. This is a procurement process that currently exists in state contracts, and we do allow large hydropower, which is a company outside of the United States, into this procurement process without questions asked. So I would just say this is a Connecticut company, and it seems to only be fair practice in a deregulated market to allow them to bid into the process. Again, it does not mean that there's a mandate to offer the bid. It allows DEEP and PURA to give tremendous oversight and to see if the bill is in the best interest of the ratepayer. I think this is a very important point to emphasize: in the best interest of the ratepayer. And if, in fact, it is not deemed that this will help lower electricity rates, there's no obligation to give the bid. I can tell you, as I know you're all very well aware, that we have some of the very highest electricity prices in the nation, with only Alaska and Hawaii that fall just a little behind us. And it's incumbent upon us as legislators to do what is in the best interest of Connecticut's ratepayers. This allows the potential to lower electric bills for our consumers. And particularly, I'm thinking about our seniors on fixed incomes, our middle-class families. I think all of us, wherever we go, we hear repeatedly, is there anything we can do about lowering our electricity bills? Well, this right now in front of us today is that option. We cannot afford to squander this opportunity to allow our nuclear power into this procurement process. And has been said by my colleagues, let's keep in mind to reach our comprehensive energy strategy plan and our integrated resources plan, we need nuclear. We need nuclear power. It generates 98% carbon-free energy, and it prevents many of the pollutants, such as sulfur and nitrogen oxides, into the air, which creates smog and acid rain. And this is also posing a health problem to many of our residents. The actual deferral of cost is in the neighborhood of $6 billion that Millstone is contributing, avoiding these risks that the pollutants cause in the air. So I would say that for the environment, this is crucial. And it was mentioned by my colleagues that we're looking to move to renewables. Everyone is, and I can say for myself, this legislation does not hurt or hinder us moving forward on solar and wind. The RFPs in the solicitation process are different, so this will not in any way harm those entities for continuing to meet our clean air goals. I think that's an important piece to underline. Another very important factor, and I know firsthand, having met and been in continuous contact with the executives and leaders of Dominion, that they will close. This is not a bluff, as I've heard throughout the chamber. They are very serious because they will need to make a business decision. And I've asked, well, what about the timing? And why couldn't we hold? The answer that I received was that the company needs to make a business decision because they are planning to put in over $700 million into the facilities for upgrade and maintenance on their reactors and the facilities. This is a very substantial amount of money to put forward if the legislature is not going to allow them into this procurement process, which gives them a little bit of stability going forward. And finally, I'd just like to say, as the legislator from Waterford, Millstone is housed in my hometown, and this is as much about a jobs bill than the other areas that I've spoken. Millstone employs over 1,500 employees on support services, another 3,000, over 4,000 employees in the state of Connecticut. They contribute back over $1.5 billion into the economy. They're a great corporate community partner helping us in our district throughout the years, and I would be remiss if I didn't say that they pay to the town of Waterford close to $30 million, and when we look at the comparison, when we talked about GE and the impact on Fairfield and what that would cost, we were in the neighborhood of $2 million. So this is a tremendous amount for my district to absorb. It would be devastating to our schools, the programs, the education, all of the infrastructure that has built up in Waterford. So I would like to say that this legislation before you today is a win-win. It's good for the economy, it's good for the environment, it's good for jobs, it's a transition period over to more renewables in the state. There's no risk involved, but there will be a tremendous loss to us here in the state if this bill does not go through today. So I would like to encourage all of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to really support this bipartisan piece of legislation that is one of the most important pieces that will come in front of this assembly for a long time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Madam. Representative Ackert of the 8th on the bill as amended. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir, and good to see you, sir.
Good to see you.
A couple of questions to the proponent of the bill as amended, sir.
Representative Reed, please prepare yourself. Representative Ackert, please proceed.
Thanks. I'm going to actually go to a couple of the sections just for clarity. I want to say that I would like to align my comments with Representative Steinberg on the fact that we need to do more here in Connecticut to assure our energy portfolio and look forward to moving this legislation forward along with others that will open that up. But in lines 21 through 25, I take it that that is the piece of the legislation that kind of says, okay, the only one that really fits that description would be the Millstone power plant. Is that correct through you, Mr. Speaker?
Representative Reed.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, actually, Millstone Power Plant and Seabrook. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Acker.
So Seabrook could actually compete in this process through you, Mr. Speaker?
Representative Reed.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, yes.
Representative Acker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the good lady for her answers. And then the next section, lines 26 through 37, they describe a process of the appraisal. And the dates kind of caught me a little bit in terms of the appraisal dates on line 32, February 1st, that they have to have that appraisal completed and have it ready for our review. Is that correct through you, Mr. Speaker?
Representative Reed.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, yes.
Representative Acker.
Great, and that's when the Office of Consumer Counsel, all other stakeholders could weigh in on that appraisal process, and then we're kind of given a short time frame if we don't like that appraisal to actually come into the chambers on March 1st to decide if we like that appraisal and want to move forward. Is that correct through you, Mr. Speaker?
Representative Reed.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, yes.
Representative Acker.
And then I asked this chamber, and I asked the good people in this chamber and the leadership at that point, that if the pushback and the appraisal is not satisfactory to us in this chamber, that we make sure that we come in a timely fashion and oppose that, that appraisal that's coming to us by March 1st. Because listen, we're only going in that first week of February. We have a limited time frame. Do you believe that is accomplishable to the good lady, Mr. Speaker?
Representative Reed.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, yes, I do. And as a good representative knows, this is not an issue that is new to us. And we have really, and I think we've really engaged more and more of our colleagues. The energy issues tend to be, they make your eyes glaze over for most people. But our colleagues, and it's important today that we're discussing it in terms of also the budget that we've just passed. This is really an economic issue. The Millstone plant, the survival of the Millstone plant until we're ready to replace it is an economic issue. Everything that we value, everything that we're trying to do, grow jobs, protect our industry, really create a much more incentive and desirability for economic development in the state. So, I think that it's really going to rise to the level of being a #1 priority to deal with it when it happens in February. And I do think that we will indeed have the ability to have the information at hand, and I think it's something we're going to really want to do because we need a plan. We need a plan for after Millstone. The states that haven't done this, New York State suddenly had 3 nuclear power plants closing upstate. And I think they had to come up with something like $7.6 billion to keep those plants open. Now, you would think a state like New York had enough power happening all over the place. They're doing wind, they're doing solar, they've got hydro. I mean, they've got Niagara Falls, they got more hydro. No, they could not survive without those plants. So we don't want to be caught in a situation like that where we're held hostage. We want to do something that's proactive, smart, rational, reasonable, and I definitely think that it's something that we'll all come together on after the findings are submitted to us on February 1st, 2018. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Acker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the good lady for her answers. It was an honor serving with her on the Energy and Technology Committee and all those that have put the good work into this. I look forward to getting good, positive appraisal that comes back and says that this is going to be good for the ratepayers, and I'm going to be in support of this legislation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Cheeseman of the 37th on the bill as amended. Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I want to join with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle in supporting this. I want to thank the good chair lady of Energy and Technology for all the work she's put in, and the ranking member. As Representative Steinberg said, this is a vital part of our electricity and energy infrastructure. Should these plants close, we'll be relying on a fossil fuel for almost 100% of our electricity. I know everybody's probably been surprised, as a freshman, all this is new to me, about how they've been inundated by opponents of this bill. Why? Follow the money. If you can go from controlling 40% of a market to almost 100% of the market, wouldn't you want that to happen? I don't blame them. These fossil fuel corporations are looking after their bottom line. But our job here in the chamber is to look after the citizens of Connecticut, to look after their pocketbooks, to look after their health, to look after their jobs. And this bill helps do that. Representative McCarty mentioned the 1,500 jobs that Millstone supplies. The median salary package is $168,000 a year. And you can have that job without having a 4-year degree. In fact, Dominion and Millstone supply 18 scholarships every year to Three Rivers Community College to train young people, older people, veterans to go work at the plant. And they're guaranteed jobs after that. These are union jobs. Laborers, carpenters, pipe fitters, insulators, operating engineers, especially when they're in an outage like now, an additional 4,000 jobs. We need good jobs. We need jobs that provide the opportunity to raise a family and stay in Connecticut. And this is what they supply. I'm going to leave you with 3 numbers. 0. This is the amount of subsidy that's included in this bill. There is no subsidy. It's an opportunity to bid. 1,500, the number of jobs that are there now, the number of jobs that will remain. 96%. 96% of our carbon-free electricity that keeps our air and water clean, that keeps our children healthy, come from this plant. And finally, $1.6 billion of the Connecticut contributed to the Connecticut economy every year. So I urge you, for the sake of our environment, of our economy, and our welfare, support this bill because we need it as we move to a renewable energy future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Lesser of the 100th. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon. Mr. Speaker, this bill is called an act concerning zero carbon procurement. For those of you who haven't worked on energy bills before, you've probably heard some jargon this afternoon, a lot of what seems like gobbledygook, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful sense. I think that energy bills, for those of you who haven't worked on policy matters before, can sometimes get complicated. Sometimes the public is confused about what we're debating, and sometimes even the members of this chamber can be. So let's be crystal clear about what the bill before us this afternoon does. At the very outset of the debate this afternoon, the gentlelady from Branford called this the Millstone bill, and she's absolutely right about that. This bill creates a process that could force 2 companies, Eversource and United Illuminating, in this state to purchase electric power against their will, presumably at higher than market rates, from a Virginia-based publicly traded corporation. The cost of those contracts would then get passed down onto Connecticut's electric ratepayers. So what are our electric ratepayers? That's you and me. That's Pratt & Whitney. That's Boehringer Ingelheim. That's Aetna. That's Sikorsky. That's Electric Boat. That's every teacher, every senior, every small business person, and every manufacturer, underscore manufacturer, in the state of Connecticut. A few minutes ago, we just passed a budget that raids the Energy Efficiency Fund and the Green Bank. And there was some discussion during the debate on the budget about the potential impact of that on electric ratepayers. So let's be very clear. The potential impact of this bill, which could be $3 billion or more over 10 years, is staggering. Members on both sides of the aisle talk about and care about the business climate in Connecticut. Some of that is determined by taxes and regulation. Some of that by the state of our state's infrastructure. Some of that by the tone that we set as a General Assembly. But everyone in this body should be aware of the fact that Connecticut has the highest electric rates in the continental United States. And there is nothing more critical to our competitiveness, particularly if you care about manufacturing, than the price of electricity. So the proponents have made a few arguments this afternoon, but in their conversations on the floor, on their colloquies, they focused on a couple of issues. One, the Millstone plant in Waterford employs a lot of people and pays good wages. And two, if the Millstone plant were to shut down, that could be disruptive to our state's electric grid. I take these concerns seriously. I could even see myself supporting ratepayer subsidies for Millstone if that were demonstrated to be in the best interests of the state of Connecticut. But with respect to my colleagues, this bill is badly drafted, it's dangerously drafted, and with respect to an ongoing study being conducted by DEEP right now, and with respect to ongoing rulemaking being done by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, I suggest that this bill jumps the gun. There are 4 questions that each and every member of this body should ask and be able to answer before you vote in the affirmative on this bill. Do you know what the impact of this vote is going to be on Connecticut's ratepayers? Do you know that? Does Millstone actually need the money? Is the amount that Millstone will actually get in this bill reflect that need? And do the benefits of subsidizing Millstone, of subsidizing the Dominion Power Company, outweigh the costs to the overall state economy of raising electric rates to provide that subsidy? And with respect, I don't think there is a person in this chamber who has the answers to any of those 4 questions. This summer, Governor Malloy signed Executive Order 59 that is looking at the potential impact of a closure at Millstone and potential policy solutions. There's only one that's baked into this bill, but there are others that are potentially available. And I will say, I'm very disturbed to know that when the State Department of Energy and Environmental Protection wrote a letter to Dominion requesting information about the finances, about the viability, about the impact on ratepayers, Dominion wrote back, and I'm going to summarize it, and I hate to say it if I put words in their mouth, but I have the actual text somewhere. But what they said is very simple. They said, this is proprietary information. We are not obligated to give it under state law, and we won't give it, despite the fact that PURA has a process to make information submitted to them confidential. If this is so important, if this is so critical to their bottom line, that they are willing to come hat in hand to this chamber asking for as much as $3 billion over 10 years of your constituents' ratepayer money, they should be happy to show us their books. To date, they have not done so. A lot of the members of this chamber are new. But the gentle lady from Branford and I were here in 2010. We remember a different time when natural gas prices were high and Millstone was generating windfall profits. That year in 2010, the Energy and Technology Committee, where we were both serving, debated a bill that would have taxed Millstone's profits and redistributed those profits back to Connecticut ratepayers. And at the time, Dominion Resources came and they argued, I thought, with quite a bit of force and validity that the market was working. That when prices go up, profits go up. When prices go down, profits go down. And that the free market was the way to go. Fast forward 7 years, and boy, has the story shifted. Up until 1998, the state of Connecticut had a monopoly in terms of power generation. We had a deal that we were going to go in as a state legislature and decide who could generate electricity and who couldn't. We went in, we looked at people's books, we guaranteed Eversource and UI a profit on their electric generation. We said, generate all the electricity, we will allow you to generate the electricity, we will give you the cost of your service, and then we will give you a reasonable rate on return. But in 1998, the legislature decided we were going to embrace the market. We thought that that would be a better deal for our constituents. And so we forced Eversource and UI to sell off their electric generation capacity. Now, that may be a good idea, that may be a bad idea. I wasn't in the legislature in 1998, I was in high school. But the fact of the matter is, we embraced the market. And since then, there have been real wins. One of the things that's really been a success is, we've been able to reduce, to embrace energy efficiency to a much greater extent than we were before. Whether or not it's been beneficial to ratepayers, I think, is more of an open question. But this bill doesn't return us to 1998, right? It says, if you make money, great, but if you lose money, we will come in as a legislature and we will intervene and we will skew the market just a little bit to make sure that you get your profit anyway. So it has all of the benefits for market participants that existed, all the protections that they had under the old system, but none of the protections for consumers, for ratepayers, for all of the manufacturers in this state who rely on electricity that we had before. So it's all of the downside, none of the upside. Mr. Speaker, I respectfully submit that this is a bad deal for Connecticut's economy and bad deal for Connecticut's ratepayers. One last point that I want to make, Mr. Speaker. There is no doubt that Millstone is a critical component of New England's electric grid. But I want to underscore that last point, New England's electrical grid. Not just Connecticut, because Millstone can sell electricity in Rhode Island and New York and Massachusetts, all across the region. And yet the bill before us has a regional benefit, but it has the ratepayers, only some of the ratepayers, by the way, only ratepayers who live in UI and Eversource territories, paying money to keep a regional plant open. There are other ways of doing this. The entire region should pick up the tab if that is what we decide to do. The bill before us, I think, is greatly problematic. And through you, Mr. Speaker, I have a couple of questions to the proponent of the bill.
Representative Reed, please prepare yourself. Representative Lesser, please proceed, sir.
Yes, through Mr. Speaker, can the gentlelady please explain to the chamber how much money Millstone generated or lost last year or over the last 10 years?
Representative Reed.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, no.
Representative Lesser.
So we are about to we're about to pass or vote on legislation, and we have no idea what Millstone's profit or loss was over the last 10 years. Through Mr. Speaker, has a ratepayer impact study been prepared? Does the gentlelady know what the maximum potential ratepayer impact of this bill is?
Representative Reed.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, this bill is designed to do analytics on Millstone, on its health, on its longevity, and to, one would hope, incorporate the impact on ratepayers. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Lesser.
I believe listening to the gentlelady, the answer is there a cap in this bill? My understanding is that the legislature, if this bill passes, the legislature does not have another bite of the apple. PURA can go ahead and require these contracts. Is there a cap on the total impact on ratepayers contained in this bill? Representative
Reed.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, well, as the gentleman from Middletown knows, there's not, there's not any of those governors on any energy legislation that we do. And the gentleman was speaking a little earlier about the market. This bill is designed to create an RFP, if possible, that's going to be overseen by DEEP and PURA and the Attorney General and the Office of Consumer Counsel, who is, her one objective in life is to protect consumers. The goal is to, if a RFP is deployed and if an RFP is accepted, it has to be in the best interest of the ratepayer. Millstone is not a stupid company. They are not going to, I would hope, put out an RFP that is so exorbitant that it won't be chosen. So the hope is that, that the ratepayer will actually benefit if this process goes through. But again, circling back, this bill does not, this is not a fait accompli bill. This is a bill that is going to allow DEEP to do the study, PURA to do a study, to submit findings to the legislature so we have a bite at the apple. And then it's going to create a venue in front of PURA and in front of DEEP with public hearings to let, I always say we're right now in the energy equivalent of Game of Thrones. We have energy titans from every sector. I'm talking solar, I'm talking wind, I'm talking natural gas, I'm talking fuel cells. All of these entities want to dominate what's next. And so we want them to be able to battle it out in an arena where we also have access. As we all know, the PURA public hearings, we can all go, we can participate, legislators can participate. It's a very active and interactive process. So when it's out the door here, there are other venues in which we can participate and take part. And again, nothing will happen unless it's in the best interest of the ratepayer. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Lesser.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, I believe the answer was no, that there is no cap on the maximum ratepayer impact to the ratepayers of the state of Connecticut. You know, the gentlelady spoke earlier of, just a minute ago, of allowing Millstone to compete. Right now, Millstone's power gets dumped into the competitive market, 100% of it. This takes, as I understand it, half of Millstone's generation and takes it out of the competitive market. It makes the markets less competitive. But Mr. Speaker, I have here a report because I asked a minute ago what Millstone's profit and loss was. How much are they making? Are they making a profit? Are they losing money? Why are we doing this? And the gentlelady didn't have an answer for that. I have a report here from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology Center on Energy and Environmental Policy Research. It's a working paper from March of this year, and it's titled Early Nuclear Retirements in Deregulated United States Markets, Causes, Implications, and Policy Options. I don't know if the members of this chamber have read this report, but it is a study of every nuclear power plant in the United States of America and an estimate by MIT about what the market conditions are currently. And according to this study, the Millstone plant is the single most profitable nuclear power plant in the United States of America. Through you, Mr. Speaker, to the gentlelady, has the gentlelady read this report and does she agree with its findings?
Representative Reed.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, I've not only read the report, I've been up to MIT, I've been to conferences at MIT, in Pennsylvania, in Austin, Texas. I've been doing conferences talking about the viability of our nuclear fleet. The viability of our nuclear fleet, given the arrival of natural gas, which is a much cheaper fuel, and the amount, the billions of dollars it costs to maintain the fleet in terms of protecting consumers and the public. They have to be upgraded constantly. They have to be refueled constantly. They have billions of dollars. They are run like military bases. They employ thousands of people who make very big salaries. And they have to be securitized. They have to have major protection. So when they're not making the money that they're used to making, they look to other areas. Dominion has gotten very involved in natural gas. Dominion has gotten very involved in renewables. As a matter of fact, every renewable opening I go to in the state, Dominion played a role. They've been a serious partner. The Summers Solar Field, the fuel cell down in Bridgeport. They have explored all of the new technologies. They're moving on from nuclear. The fact that this plant is still making money is a good thing, which means that it might survive longer than other nuclear plants around the country. But to suggest that they're just going to sit on an old technology forever and ever and not have a level of certainty about the kind of money they're going to make, there is no board in the world that would sit there and let that happen. And so I think sometimes when you see numbers on a page, and as I said, I have been to MIT. I'm going up again, I think, in 2 or 3 weeks to be on a panel there to discuss this very issue. They don't tell the real story. The real story, old technology, most nuclear plants built in the 70s, these big companies, these smart companies, they're moving on. And so, you know, my feeling is that anything we can do to kind of not only delay that, but prepare for that, for what happens after Millstone, is really, really important. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Lester.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate hearing from the gentlelady about Dominion's diversified presence in Connecticut and across the country in a variety of different energy markets. But my question is really specific to their Millstone generating facility. The MIT study, which is not based on proprietary data, because Millstone has not released any proprietary data, but it's based on publicly available data, suggests that Millstone is the single most profitable nuclear plant in the United States of America. Does the gentlelady, through you, Mr. Speaker, agree with or disagree with that assessment? And if she disagrees with that, does she have evidence that she'd like to share with the chamber to that effect?
Representative Reed.
Through you, Mr. Speaker. So just to circle back, so the gentleman is asking if I agree with the data that has been, not publicly available data, but I mean publicly available data, but not the books, that it's probably the most profitable nuclear facility in the country. I would say it is. I'm a person, I used to be a journalist. I have spent a lot of time in nuclear power plants. I've spent some very unhappy times in nuclear power plants. I covered 3 Mile Island. I got tear gassed covering 2,000 people marching to keep Seabrook from opening, my camera crew and I. I covered Shoreham. I was out in Hanford, Washington to cover a nuclear power plant that was disposing of radioactive water into the Columbia River. And actually, I covered Millstone before I went to New York. I was at Channel 3. And Millstone was operated by what's now Eversource, Northeast Utilities. It was very badly operated. There were a lot of shutdowns. There were a lot of issues. Dominion came in, and they know how to run nuclear power plants. As I say, not a big fan of nuclear, but if you're going to have them, you better have a company that knows what they're doing. If they're doing it well, when you meet the engineers at Millstone, they are an impressive, impressive lot. These people are educated, they are devoted, they are on it, and so I think when you know how to run something and you run it well, you're probably more profitable than your competitors, or your not even competitors, other nuclear plants in other areas who really don't have that level of professionalism. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Lester.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate hearing about the professionalism of the Millstone employees, and I share the gentlelady's appreciation for the hardworking Connecticut residents who are there. But with due respect, that I don't think is the issue before this chamber. It's not whether or not we like the employees of Millstone. We do. The question is whether or not this particular bill that's before us is the appropriate public policy for solving a potential political and policy problem. I mentioned earlier there is currently a review underway, according to Executive Order 59, to look at the impact of a potential Millstone closure on Connecticut and come up with policy options. In addition, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission is currently developing rules to subsidize baseload power generation in the United States of America across the entire country. And if they move to adopt those rules, it won't just be Connecticut ratepayers who will be supporting Millstone, but Massachusetts and Rhode Island and New York ratepayers too. My understanding, Mr. Speaker, is that Executive Order 59 requires a ratepayer impact study. That is not in this bill. I just heard a minute ago from the gentlelady that there is no cap on this bill on the potential ratepayer impact. And just a minute ago, we also heard that she agrees with the assessment that Millstone is most likely the most profitable nuclear power plant in the United States of America. So if all of those conditions are there, and she said they might hang on longer than other plants, that they might be more profitable, they might be around more than other plants. So if all of those are true, and I believe that they are, why are we here in special session short-circuiting a process currently underway at FERC and at PURA with this bill that, one, eliminates any requirement of a ratepayer impact study, two, takes the General Assembly completely out of the equation because we don't have to ever vote on this again. $3 billion of your constituents' money could be spent if we adopt this bill with no safeguards from this body whatsoever. And three, no regional support at all. It's simply borne by those of us who live in Eversource and UI territories. So if any of you represent Wallingford or any of the other towns served by municipal electric companies, lucky you, this is a free vote. But for those of us who have to pay the bill, this could be serious business. Through Mr. Speaker, to the gentlelady, why are we short-circuiting the process in this special session?
Representative Lesser, I believe we should focus our attention on the document that's before us, the verbiage within the document, and try to avoid a personal comment or opinion that the chairwoman would have based on a question that is a little bit off the path of the document that's before us. So I don't know if you'd like to rephrase.
Mr. Speaker, I actually would choose not to, and certainly no personal comment was intended from that question. I would withdraw the question. Mr. Speaker, the clerk is in possession of an amendment, LCO 10103. I would ask that the clerk please call the amendment. I'd be glad to leave the chamber to summarize.
Will the clerk please call amendment LCO number 10103, designated as House Amendment A.
LCO number 10103, designated House Amendment Schedule A, and offered by Representatives Lesser, Candelaria, et al.
Representative Lesser, will you comment on the amendment for us?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this amendment is very simple. It allows the bill to go forward. It simply requires that prior to the bill going forward, that Dominion show PURA their books. I move adoption.
I'm sorry, Representative Lesser, I was on the phone. Could you please proceed? I'm sorry.
I move adoption.
Motion for the Chamber's adoption of House Amendment Schedule A. Any comment, further comment on House Amendment A? Representative Lesser.
Yes, I also would ask that if, when the vote be taken by roll.
The question for the Chamber is the vote be taken by roll call. All those in favor of roll call vote signify by saying aye. Aye. When the vote is taken, it will be taken by roll. Will you comment further on the amendment for us? Comment further on the amendment for us. Representative Lesser.
I think I summarized it before. It seems like a common sense proposal. It would require that Dominion show their books prior to receiving one of these contracts. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Before the chamber is House Amendment A. Does anyone wish to comment on House Amendment A? There's several members listed on the board. I'm not. Representative McCarthy on House Amendment A.
Mr. Speaker. Yes, I would like to comment on it, and I'd just like to clarify one point that the proponent of the amendment has made, and that it's asking for Millstone to open up its books. My understanding is that the regulators will take care of that. They've already promised to comply with opening the books, so I feel that this amendment is not necessary. I would urge all of my colleagues to vote no on the amendment in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Hoyt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I agree with my colleague from Waterford. I've heard the same thing. I believe the governor was fairly direct in his executive order that he expected this to happen as well. I understand that Dominion has agreed to this. This is not the way to do business in Connecticut as usual. This is not a Connecticut asset that's owned by Connecticut ratepayers, as some of our other assets. And then I'd like to also address that when we had those assets that were then owned by Connecticut ratepayers that we had to dispel with when we did deregulation, there was a reason, because due to as mentioned by my colleague from Brantford, the operation was not as clean as we would have hoped, not as professional, not as efficient, not as safe. And so consequently, I also urge my colleagues to vote no on this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Madam. Representative Terzia, you have the floor, sir, on House Amendment A.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. A question to the proponent of the amendment, please.
Please proceed, sir.
Thank you. Is there anything in this amendment that stops this cold in its tracks? If we pass this amendment, is there any way for Millstone to show that they have a need and for us to respond to that once it's proven? Or will this just stop it dead in its tracks and we've not given Millstone a fair chance? I'm asking about which it is, sir, or if there's another choice. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Lesser.
To my knowledge, through you, Mr. Speaker, to the gentleman from New Britain, this amendment has no effect except to require them to disclose elements of their finances privately to the Public Utility Regulatory Authority.
Representative Terzia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm content, and I hope everybody will join me in supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Representative Kendall. Kendall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this amendment before us. As you know, the underlying bill does impact the ratepayers. We might have the conversation that it will not have an impact on them, but definitely it does. And we just recently passed a budget that affects the most vulnerable population in this state, and we're telling them on faith, I'm just taking on faith, let's pass this bill. It's not going to have an impact on you. What we're doing, we're talking about transparency with this amendment. That's all it does. It is transparency. You are asking us to pass this bill. What we are asking this chamber is for transparency by passing this amendment. That's all that we're doing. So, Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to support this amendment.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And just very briefly, I'm associating my remarks with my colleagues on accountability, transparency, and as an economist, the best decisions are made with the most information available for our consumers, for our ratepayers, and for us as legislators. This is merely, and I was here many, many years ago when we had to do this with the Sooty 6, and I was the economist that did the analysis of the Sooty 6, and we went through this same issue. The proprietary numbers, what were the numbers? We managed to get there, and we managed to protect our citizens from the pollution from the city's 6 power plants. This is yet again another request for information so we can make a good decision. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Cheeseman of 37th. Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I just want to reiterate what my colleagues, Representative Hoydick and Representative McCarty, said. Dominion has committed in meetings with Pura and Deep to provide the information needed so they can make an informed choice. And this is a study. This allows the process to move forward and the recommendation to come back. I have full faith in the Office of the Consumer Counsel, the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, and Pura to make a decision based on the information they need. And they will have that information and make a decision that's in the best interest of the ratepayers. With having said that, I would urge my colleagues to oppose this amendment and let the underlying bill go forward to provide the certainty we need for a safe, reliable, affordable energy future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Madam. Representative Mashinsky, are you want to rise and comment on the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do. And I do rise in support of the amendment. We are first of all, I have no dog in this fight. I come from Wallingford. It's a municipal electric company. None of my constituents are affected by this bill whatsoever. So I can just look at it as an outside person interested in the policy. But we are about to give a special deal without getting all the factual information. And in my view, the third-party review of this data should happen before passage of this bill, before authorizing a new subsidy. Pura is the logical choice for the review. This is what they do all day. They review data. Their charge is to represent the consumers as well as determine the supplies and deal with the best interests of the state. So that's probably who should do the reviewing. And even if they have to review it privately and issue a finding, that would be acceptable to me also. When we did the state water plan, which is coming up now to the legislature in February, we had the same issue. The water companies did not want to reveal their personal data. They did not want to show weakness or show any numbers to their competitors. And we said, okay, we can't write the water plan without the data, so how about if all of you share your data with a third party who will be bound to not release the information but will evaluate the needs of the state based on the data which will remain top secret. And that is how the state water plan was written, and that is how it will be presented to you, my colleagues, in the next session. So we won't know how healthy or unhealthy MDC or Connecticut Water or any of those companies are, but we will know the needs of the state and how they will be dealt with by balancing the production of water. In the same way, we're being asked now to give these folks a special subsidy, but we don't yet have the information. The people who can best judge it don't yet have the information. But the decision we make today will authorize a subsidy. So we're doing this in backwards order. If we said, and I didn't actually read my colleague's amendment carefully. I don't know if Pura is allowed to keep the information within their own building and not release it. But even if we said the data had to be submitted, Pura would analyze it and not release it, that would be acceptable to me. But I just want someone whose job it is to protect the state to look at this information, look at this data and make a ruling. And then I would feel more comfortable giving them the subsidy. I do want the plant to stay open. It is a carbon-free plant, important to the state. But I'm not convinced, as of today, that they have made their case. So I do support this amendment. We need the information. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Point of clarification, if I can, from the proponent of the amendment.
Representative Lesher, please prepare yourself for a clarification question. Representative Morris, please proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think we just heard earlier from my colleague from the other side of the aisle on the 37th that there's a number of different agencies that were listed that provide some kind of assessment as to the to Dominion's ability or need for such a subsidy. What is the difference between those organizations and what is being proposed here in your amendment, or are they the same and it's just a matter of timing?
Representative.
Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Through you to the gentleman from Norwalk. The bill will remain the same. The question is the due diligence that is being done beforehand to make sure that contracts entered into under this bill are in the best interest of Connecticut ratepayers. And if we're going to ask the Public Utility Regulatory Authority to make that determination, they need to know whether the full impact of whatever potential contract is on Millstone's operations, whether or not Millstone needs the money, how much they need, and the impact on ratepayers. And they can't get that without full cooperation. One of my colleagues from the other side just mentioned that in the last few days, after rejecting in writing a request from DEEP for information, that they have come forward and said, well, now we will allow you to see some of our information. But to my knowledge, none of that has happened so far. This simply puts that promise that Dominion has now made to the people of Connecticut into the text of the bill. It comports with what Dominion says they're going to do. This just makes sure that they actually follow through on that. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the good gentleman. So my understanding is that in essence, it's still the same type of assessment regardless of whether it's done before or afterwards. This really is a timing issue. Therefore, I highly support this amendment. I don't understand why we would be willing to do any other type of subsidy without knowing beyond a shadow of a doubt that there is such a need. And if the Dominion is willing to provide that after the fact, I don't understand why they wouldn't want to do that beforehand in order to assure the public and tax dollars are rightfully needed and spent for this. So thank you very much for this amendment. I will be supporting it.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Elliott, do you wish to comment on the House Amendment A or on the bill? On the bill? Thank you, sir. Representative Hoytek, do you wish to comment or question for the second time, madam?
Yes, Mr. Speaker,
Please
for the
proceed.
second time. Thank you very much. The good representative from Middletown mentioned the word gobbledygook. Having dealt with energy in this chamber for over 6 years, I know when your eyes glaze over. I understand when we don't understand what we're talking about. I understand that this is a very detailed and difficult subject matter. But let me make this perfectly clear to every one of you. On the basis of my children's lives, this bill is not a subsidy. Don't use that word. It doesn't pertain here. This bill is about an appraisal. This bill is allowing the Connecticut DEEP Commissioner, along with PURA, to look at the analysis that they are presented by the nuclear power plant that we have in Connecticut as to whether it is appropriate or enough for them to be involved in the procurement process for Connecticut residents. I can't say it any more clearly. It is not a subsidy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Dela Cruz of the 41st.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a comment. We're asking today why we wouldn't support this amendment or why I'm not supporting it. Today, in essence, would kill this bill today if we do vote on this. This is something that will have to be another wait till next year. And again, the speed of business moves a lot faster than the speed of government. There's no doubt about that. We can all agree with that. We talk about 24 months that we've been talking to Millstone and trying to come up with a solution to this problem. And after 24 months, we're talking about creating a study so we can find out where they stand. I have a different kind of outlook on this. I actually have done 4 Millstone shutdowns. I'm a union sheet metal worker. It's hard to understand the energy side of it. It's hard to understand the side that where instead of selling to a hedge fund, they're going to sell directly to Connecticut. Those are all confusing issues. The issue I can bring up and let folks know is Millstone has 3 nuclear power generating stations on site, or had 3. One is shut down. The other 2 have a nuclear license till about 2033. We know, and Millstone both know, that they won't be here in 15 or 16 years, no matter what. So when we make our decision on how, or when they make their decision, and we go through these shutdowns all the time, the doors open up, we walk in. Sheet metal workers take all the insulation off, all the lagging. Then X-ray technology guys go in there and they check all the pipes. So if those pipes get a little bit thinner, they're required to change them in the next shutdown. This is a business that knows how much money they're going to spend almost to the nickel over the next 15 years to continue the business to run. So it makes sense right now that they're asking to become competitive in this new market. It is a new world. Gas and pipelines have created pressure probably on their business. But for them to make a decision, do they want to make an $800 million investment in a plant that they know is going to close in 16 years, the window starts getting shorter. So if they're getting the idea that they're not going to make enough money to stay open, I think the problem is in this room, some of us are feeling they're so big. You know, too big to fail, that one? A lot of us feel that they're too big to close. Well, that's not really the truth, and it's a gamble, I think, that I'm not willing to take. There are a lot of jobs connected to it. We mentioned 1,500 jobs. I think of the thousands of people that are actually retired from local unions that are, in my union in particular, but also the pipe fitters union, that are retired because of what Millstone not only has done in the past, but what they continue to do. You know, they do the shutdowns. A lot of the guys that I work with rely on those shutdowns to keep their insurance for the year, to keep that going. And to just sit here and think that there's no way they're going to close because they're too big, I think is a calculated error on our part. Because again, all these things are numbers. And if their calculator comes up and the bottom number tells them to open or close, they're going to go by that calculation. And I think we're taking a risk by not heeding what they say, at least. I think a lot of them, again, they are a big business. They've made a lot of money. But they've also been an unbelievable asset, not only to our region. I've heard other legislators who are from other parts of the state making announcements that they don't have a dog in this race. I disagree. If they're creating $1.5 billion into our economy, I would say they're our dog. We have to be with them. So again, I stand up against this amendment, not because I don't like transparency, not because I'm against finding out everything I can find out ahead of time. I have heard from the Millstone folks that they are opening up their books. DEP will get a look at them. And again, after 2 years of talking, how much longer could we possibly wait? I just don't think we can. So again, I am against this amendment. I'm supporting this bill along with my delegation from Southeastern Connecticut. Make sure everyone knows that this isn't a Southeastern Connecticut effort. This should be an effort by all of us. This Millstone is very important to all of our states. So hopefully everyone in this room can support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Carney, the 23rd, sir. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I just rise for a comment. I would like to piggyback off what the good representative from the 41st District had to say. We don't share a ton of common. We both worked at Pizza Works in Old Saybrook, but we both agree that this is a bad amendment. And I agree with Representative Dela Cruz for the reasons he gave, that this amendment would effectively kill the bill. I just want to remind folks that, as he had, that Millstone generates about $1.5 billion in annual economic impact, employs a workforce of 1,000 plus, and that's not including the jobs that the good representative was discussing that comes in during shutdown. And these jobs are highly skilled, well-paid jobs, and they're for people that you don't even need a college degree, and you can go and work at Millstone, and you're well-treated, you're well-paid, and you are able to give back to your economy, you're able to buy a home, you're able to start a family. This company provides folks with something that I think a lot of us feel is sort of dying in the state of Connecticut, and that's the American dream or the Connecticut dream. It gives someone the opportunity to go to a 2-year college, go and work at Millstone, and go buy a home in Waterford, go buy a home in East Lyme, go buy a home in Old Lyme, and participate in that economy. What this amendment could do is eliminate that. It could get rid of the payroll of $118 million that this company provides its direct employees, and $27 million alone to the town of Waterford. We just passed a budget that saved a lot of towns from drastic property tax increases and a potential to dissolve into other towns and things like that. Not passing this bill could effectively do that to the town of Waterford, and it would have drastic repercussions all across southeastern Connecticut. And I talk to people in southeastern Connecticut all the time, and they always seem to feel forgotten by the people up here, by legislators up here. And that's a shame, because southeastern Connecticut, in my opinion, I know I represent a district there, is the greatest place in the state, one of the greatest places on earth. And, you know, aside from the jobs, we also have to think about the environment. And Millstone isn't struggling in this energy market necessarily because of renewables. And I'm a huge supporter of renewables. I think we should get to 100% as quickly as we can. We can't do it, though, without a carbon-free power to get us to bridge that gap. It's still a long ways down the road, and the technology is still a long ways down the road to get us to get to 100% renewable. But the problem is Millstone is in this position because of an abundance of natural gas due to the development and continued development of fracking technology. Now, we had a bill here to ban fracking waste, which I was a strong supporter of. I don't like fracking. I don't like natural gas. I wish we could get away from that. It's bad for the economy. It's causing climate change. And we really need to move away from that. And Millstone is a partner in that. It's not the only answer. It's a partner in that to get us to that renewable goal. So as I've said, this amendment will effectively do a great deal of harm to the people of the state and southeastern Connecticut, whether you're from North Stonington, or Old Lyme or Old Saybrook. And I'm no economist, but that's not good. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Reed, would you like to comment on House Amendment A, ma'am?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, just briefly, I think it's an enormous myth that that we bring in companies and that they open up their books and we look at all their books. We don't look at these. We don't see the books of NRG or Calpine or Dinergy or Hydro-Quebec, a foreign company that's selling us a lot of electricity. We don't see these books. And so I'm opposed to this amendment, I should say that. This is a distraction. Already, Dominion has agreed to sit down with Pura and Deep and to talk about where they are economically. But this doesn't become, this is proprietary information. This is the kind of thing that competitors need to keep, in correct venues and not just blow it out all over the place without it being, the people making sure that they're taking care of it and not abusing it and not misusing it and giving competitors an edge, all those things. We do this all the time with companies. Connecticut Innovations, when they are talking to private companies to get grants, and they're competing for grants, they will sit down with the Connecticut Innovations team and they will talk about what their books are, and it's very proprietary. They can't throw it out there into the general public. It has to be kept at close range, but they use it in their decision making. And that's exactly what's going to happen if it happens, if we approve the analytics and the findings and allow this to go ahead. That is exactly what will happen with Pura and Deep. They're making plans right now, Dominion, to meet with Pura and Deep. So again, I'm opposed to this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Madam. We remark further on House Amendment A. We remark further on House Amendment A. If not, will staff and guests please come to the well of the House? Will members please take your seats? The machine will be open.
The House of Representatives is voting by roll. Members to the chamber. The House of Representatives is voting by roll. Members to the chamber.
Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? If all the members have voted, please check the board to determine if your vote has been properly cast. If all the members have voted, the machine will be locked and the clerk will take a tally. Clerk, please announce the tally.
House Amendment A, total number voting 142, necessary for adoption 72, those voting A 55, those voting nay 87, absent not voting 9.
House Amendment A fails. House will return to the call of Senate Bill 1501. Is there a comment or questioning on Senate Bill 1501? Is there further comment on Senate Bill 1501? Seeing none, staff and guests, Representative Urban of the 43rd, ma'am. You have the
Thank you,
floor.
Mr. Speaker. This is on the bill.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Speaker, I find it a little ironic that in this budget we just cut green alternative energy initiatives that were funded by the ratepayer and acted as a strong incentive for job creation in that industry. And now we're looking to allow nuclear power to compete for Class 1 renewables. The nuclear power industry already has a huge market advantage. And I'm just going to briefly give you some useful data that is rarely heard. We started the nuclear power industry under something called Atoms for Peace, if everybody remembers the atom bomb. And it was to boost homegrown energy and showcase the peaceful use of nuclear power, which had previously only been used for war. I think people here might remember some of that when we talked about pennies per kilowatt. But the industry was afraid of initially the liability in the case of an accident. And because of that fear, Congress passed something called the Price-Anderson Act. That Price-Anderson Act limited, capped liability in the case of a nuclear accident. And I will quote from that act. It says that federal and state, listen to what I'm saying, federal and state governments will step in and cover bodily injury, sickness, disease, resulting death, property damage, and loss, as well as reasonable living expenses for individuals evacuated in the event of a disaster. That law capped liability at $12.6 billion. That was back in the 50s. In 1982, the Sandia National Lab, commissioned by the NRC, looked at that cap again and realized that it would be $314 billion in the case of a catastrophic accident. In today's dollars, that is $720 billion. So that act has created a cap, which I would submit to you gives the nuclear industry already a huge advantage in the energy market. And we are now contemplating giving them another advantage and allowing them to compete with alternate energy sources. The state government has a report due in February of 2018. Secretary Perry of the Energy Committee and Commission in the federal government is looking at ways to give nuclear industry a incentive. So I would submit to you today that we do not need to do this. I actually have an amendment, but I will not call it. I just wanted to have the opportunity to remind people that if there is a nuclear power accident, federal and state money, they're the ones that are going to cover that, up to $12.6 billion. Those accidents can cost $730 billion. That is a market advantage. They have a market advantage. We need to let them compete. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Madam. Representative Terziak, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I was hoping to call an amendment. If there are other people who want to speak on the bill and you want me to wait, that would be fine, or I could do the amendment now.
Representative Terziak, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. This is a horrible bill, folks. It's a straight-up subsidy. It's not good for our constituents. You've heard the potential for costs here. We're being told jobs, 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 because we're just supposed to fall down and genuflect when somebody says jobs, jobs, jobs. We're being told this is good for pollution, and as long as we ignore that the byproduct of this, the waste of this kind of power, has to be watched for 10,000 years. But we'll settle that on ours. It's okay. We're not going to call that a subsidy. But still, in this bill, as it's written now, we give up our right to say yes or no to any increases in rates that are proposed by DEEP. My amendment is simple. Just like we earlier today decided that the only right thing to do with employee contracts is to have a vote on the record, we should do that with this too. Let's have a vote like the amendment. Yes, sir.
Representative Terziak, I believe we need to first have the clerk call the amendment, and then we can move to summarize or have an opinion on that. So
thank you, sir. I still get that wrong after all these years.
So will the clerk please call LCO number 10101 will be designated House Amendment B.
Thank you very much.
House Amendment Schedule B, LCO number 10101, offered by Representative Terziak.
Thank you. Representative Terziak, would you like to summarize the amendment, sir?
Yes, I would, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
And then proceed for move for adoption.
Yes, I would like, when we have a vote on this, for it to be by roll call, please.
Question for the chamber is roll call vote on the amendment. All those in favor of a roll call vote on the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. When the vote is taken, it will be taken by roll. Please proceed, Representative Terziak.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I've already mentioned some of the things that I don't like about this bill, but my amendment is a simple one. In the way that we decided earlier today that the only fair thing to do was for us to stand up and be counted when it comes to being responsible for money. When we said every state employee contract will now not just have a period for us to turn it down, but we will have to actively and affirmatively pass it. We should make Millstone, should we be silly enough to pass this bill otherwise, we should make sure that they follow those same rules. It was good for them. It'll be difficult for us. It's the same deal. I hope everybody will vote for my amendment. It's just that simple. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Terziak. Representative Winkler of the 56th, did you want to comment on the amendment? But before you do that, Representative Terziak, I believe we need you to move adoption of the amendment, sir.
Amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'll volunteer to keep standing here until we're sure I've done everything right. I appreciate your help. And I move adoption of this amendment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Winkler of the 56th, do you wish to comment on House Amendment B?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Please proceed, sir.
For over 40 years, this legislature showed a lack of intestinal fortitude. We allowed state employee contracts to go into effect without a vote. We should vote on state employee contracts. Now we're being asked to allow a major change in our electric rates to go through without a vote. If the bill, the underlying bill, would allow the appraisal to go through if we did nothing. All the amendment does is say that we will vote on the bill. We will vote to accept or reject the appraisal. We will not let it go through by doing nothing the way we used to do with contracts until the vote today. It is irresponsible to dodge votes on issues. Please vote yes on this amendment and be responsible. Vote to accept or reject the appraisal. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, sir. Remark further on House Amendment B. Remark further on House Amendment B. If not, will staff and guests please come to the well of the House? Members, please take your seats. The machine will be open.
The House of Representatives is voting by roll. Members to the chamber. The House of Representatives is voting by roll. Members to the chamber.
Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? If all the members have voted, please check the board to see where vote has been properly cast. If all the members have voted, the machine will be... The machine... Machine will be locked, and the clerk will take a tally.
53, 87, 11.
Clerk, please announce the tally.
House Amendment Schedule B, total number voting 140, necessary for adoption 71, those voting yea 53, those voting yea 87, absent not voting 11.
House Amendment B fails. Chamber will return to debate on Senate Bill number 1501. Any comments or questions on Senate Bill 1501? Representative Elliott of the 88th. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Through you, Mr. Speaker, to the proponent of the bill, what is the cost of this bill to the general fund?
Representative Reed, please prepare yourself. Representative Reed, did you hear the question before the chamber, for you?
Yes, I did, Mr.
Please proceed.
Speaker. The process will be paid for. The process that might be initiated after the findings are accepted by the General Assembly. If that happens, that process will be paid for by the nuclear company that is involved in the process, not from the general fund. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Elliott.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, to the proponent of the bill, does this bill have anything to do with the state budget?
Representative Reed.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, no, it does not. And as a matter of fact, that was something that all of us who really believed in this bill wanted to make sure did not happen. We did not want it to show up in an implementer. We did not want to have it to appear sneaky or that there were ulterior motives. We wanted to bring it before our colleagues, have a debate again if this indeed bill is passed and the findings are brought to us in February, have a debate again. We want to make sure that our colleagues are very engaged in the process. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Elliott.
That's all, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Will you comment further on the bill before us, Senate Bill 1501? Will you comment further on the bill before us? If not, will staff and guests please come to the well of the House? Remember to please take your seats. The machine will be open.
The House of Representatives is voting by roll. Members to the chamber. The House of Representatives is voting by roll. Members to the chamber.
Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? Will the members please check the board to determine if your vote has been properly cast? If all the members have voted, the machine will be locked. The clerk will take a tally. Clerk, please announce tally.
Emergency certification 1501 is amended by Senate A in concurrence with the Senate. Total number voting 141, necessary for passage 71. Those voting yea 75. Those voting nay 66. Absent not voting 10.
The bill passes in concurrence with the Senate.